Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to a Nutcracker tournament. That's to remind you, that's the last day. 3 more rounds of Rapid to go to conclude the event, and it's the first time we have the situation when the younger team, the Princes, are in the lead. They are leading by +2, and it seems the team of Kings still cannot find their play in the Rapid. Yeah, they went to play the Rapid portion yesterday with a solid lead, +4. And since then, it all went downhill for the team of Kings, and even their leader, Shahryar Mamedyarov, so far cannot find his play. Right, so let's see what awaits us in this round. Grigory Oparin will face Alexei Shirov. Alexei Shirov is the only player who did not lose a single game so far in the team of Kings. Danil Yufa has the white pieces against Boris Gelfand. On your screen right now, Mamedyarov against Yesipenko. And Vladislav Artemyev, the leader and I'd say the hero of a Rapid portion, he faces Sergei Rublevsky. So that's the position in Mamedyarov-Yesipenko. So, well, a somewhat offbeat opening by Shahryar Mamedyarov. I think we can... I mean, how do we call this one? It's a Tsuketot opening, right? Takes on c5, bishop c5, a3, I guess? Got to be a3 with the idea to play b4, c4, you know, get some space. We'll see how it goes. Then what else do we have? A very interesting Rui Lopez in Oparin Shirov. So Utayev variation with b5, bishop c5, a4, rook b8, c3. I guess all that is still known. a5, bishop h7. Bishop a7, h3, castles, bishop e3, once again the same motive, you cannot take on e4 because of bishop d5. Rook back to a8. Played very quickly by Alexei Shirov. I mean, if this one is not a mysterious move, that I don't know what is. Rook a8 to protect the a7 bishop. Knight bd2, h6, rook e1, rook to e8, queen to c2, and Shirov is thinking for the first time in this game. I guess, well, bishop b7 might be and should be perhaps the move, but then white gets to play d5 comfortably. You will have to go knight e7. White swaps the bishops here, goes c4, and I'm not sure how good this position is for black. Maybe black can play c5, trying to block everything. c5 with b4 idea. Let's see. Rublevsky-Artemyev, the Caro-Kann was played. Once again, I think this line was debated in the matchup of Sergei Rublevsky and Andrei Yesipenko. Rublevsky twice had decent positions. I mean, in classical game he was much better. In the second game it was around equal, I guess, but the result is terrible for Sergei Rublevsky. He scored 0 out of 2. So let's see how the third Caro-Kann is going for him. Artemyev plays it in a little bit different way, so he goes knight e7, and after bishop e2 he goes knight to c8. Castles, bishop e7, I think once again it's all well known. a5, white tries to seize some space, also takes the b6 square from the knight or the queen. a6, because you don't want white to play a6. c4 takes, bishop takes, knight goes to a7, bishop e3, knight b5. Queen e2 and bishop g4 was played. h3, bishop goes to h5. So far, Rublevsky has 0 against Artemyev once again. 2 games they played in this tournament, and in both Vladislav Artemyev, he had twice he had the white pieces, and twice he has won against Sergei Rublevsky. So, what did you know? Well, white has quite a serious space advantage, right? So he can even increase it with g4, knight, for instance, knight f to d2. Here I'm not really sure where the knight is supposed to go, but I mean just clearing the way for an f pawn. So say knight d2 and then see f2, f4 on the next move. But then you probably have to you know, make sure that you are fine after c5, trying to trying to open the position up. Okay, we'll see. That's clearly a somewhat provocative line played by Artemiev. So white really would like to see some space on the king side. I'm wondering, yeah, it does look like g4 will be the move for Sergei Rublevsky, because it's not that clear what else can you do here, right? I mean, white has a lot of space on the queen side, but he's unlikely to make some progress there. So I guess it's got to be g4 and then the knight move with f4 idea. Right, Mamedyarov and Yesipenko develops, a3 was played, and Andrei Yesipenko went queen e7, where I would think b4 with c4 to follow would have been the right plan, but Mamedyarov decides to go c4 first, which allows black to play a5 and somewhat restrict white's active possibilities on the queen side. Queen c2 and bishop moves to d6. So it would really be, I mean, white would really be much more comfortable having b3, b4 played. Now it's really a question how to continue with white. I guess he might consider taking on d5, even though this version of queen's isolated pawn, I guess, kind of favors black. Even, I know, here white is probably fine taking. I mean, it was too early to take before castle, because after bishop f6, queen f6, the rook is hanging on a1, and bishop h7 is not such a great idea, because the rook is hanging and g6 is a threat, so the bishop gets trapped on h7. But after castle short, white does threaten to take on f6. Maybe that's what Mamedyarov will do. No, he castles without taking on d5, which is absolutely fine. I guess it's clever to keep the tension here, especially that black is unlikely to take himself on c4, which, by the way, kinda gives white, yeah, I think it gives white an edge immediately, because knight takes c4, bishop f6, bishop h7 is a threat, and the bishop on d6, well, you don't really want to exchange it for a knight. So a castle, well, still a bit more comfortable for white, right? e5 is not an issue because of a capture, so Yesipenko ends up playing h7, h6, simply moving the h pawn. It's not attacked anymore, but this kind of gives white one more tempo in developing his initiative. I guess e3, e4 might be an interesting try to do so. Really, okay, e5 is a threat, so you have to react with black. d4 is unlikely to be the move. I mean, knight takes, bishop takes, a check on h2, but it doesn't really work, it seems. Check on d6. Now if the king is moved, queen takes d4 should give black a decent position. e5, therefore, knight g4 check. King goes to g3, that's important. Black takes on d4 and knight f3. I think in the end of this forcing line, white is safe grabbing the knight on the next move. So this long tactical sequence seemingly works for white, therefore e4 seems to be tactically possible, at least there is no d4. If black takes on e4, it's knight takes, bishop takes. And potentially black has a very good pair of pawns, f and e pawns, right? I mean, if he manages to move them forward, but it's not that easy once again, because if you start with f5, I think bishop c6 followed by rook e1 is strong, so stopping the e pawn, it won't go far away. I mean, you can actually play knight e5 outright, which is a decent alternative. And if instead of e5 black goes f5, well, different things are possible. Once again, you should consider taking, and as well the more positional approach with a check and bishop f5 might work as well. So altogether looks like white will be somewhat better in this case. But Mamedyarov obviously is looking for the way to keep as much tension as possible. So if it was possible to play some other move, I think he would end up playing it, like rook e1 maybe. Finally, he decided to go e3, e4 nevertheless. So let's see how this develops. As I said, At least there is no d4 for black. dc4 seems inferior because white takes once again with the tempo attacking the bishop, threatening e4, e5. All the positions with two bishops I think are favorable for white. Let's say if black goes e5, then you just take and play a move like h3. Well, Yasipenko in fact has taken on c4 the move which I thought is, well, kind of not good. Knight takes, and he keeps the bishop by playing bishop c5. Really, really provocative stuff, I have to say, because white has e4, e5 as an option in some positions. He has to watch out for black playing e5. At the moment it doesn't seem to be possible because white's going to take. So there is still a room for white to find. I mean, he can still wait one more move with e4, e5. So the point being, I want to play a move like queen e2, for instance. And then after b6, white already has e5 and queen e4, which does seem to be very, very pleasant because black is practically forced to go g6. Right. An immediate e5 doesn't give white such an option because after knight d5 you can't really play queen e2 because of knight f4. So I would really try to wait one more move with white, like playing queen e2. But of course then you have to make sure e5 is not that great for white. Not that great for black, obviously. Right, Artemiev is trying to arrange some counterplay against Wróblewski. There have been quite a few moves since we've left it. Bishop h5, rook f to d1 was played, knight went back to c7, knight c1 and f7, f6. So knight from c7 was played to... Knight to c7 was played to support the e6 pawn so that f7, f6 is possible. Now Wróblewski really has to play g2, g4, simply no other options for him. Still think white is fine objectively, so knight is heading to f4 if given a chance. I guess white has to be somewhat better here. But yeah, after losing so many games, I can imagine Wróblewski is not that confident. And of course it's, I mean, psychologically you really want to be on a safe side, and therefore you might refrain from moves like g2, g4, even though objectively it does seem to be the best move. Right, Oparin against Shirov. I think Shirov has started to think, I mean, it might be a critical position for him. After queen c2 he went to take on d4, and Grigory Oparin has taken with the bishop. So bishop b7 has happened. That's interesting because, I mean, your first instinct is to take on d4, but then after that the bishop on a7 is somewhat out of play, while white is threatening e5. I mean, especially after bishop b7, I think e5 is quite strong. So some light square weaknesses in the black's camp might start to tell. Bishop b7 therefore, bishop takes, rook takes, knight d4, knight e5, f4 was played, and the knight finds its place on d7. Let's see what's going to happen. Bishop f7, which is an issue sometimes, but not here, I believe, because bishop f7, king f7, queen b3. There should be few moves for black, but so far I don't really see what's wrong with king g6, then later on running to h7. So it's rather white has to come up with some centralization, like rook d1, hoping to play e5 when black goes knight c5, I mean, hoping to make e5 work. The rook is awkward on a7, but apart from this, black's position is sort of okayish. He has pressure on e4, which can be increased with knight c5, obviously. Right, Oparin is thinking, and we have one more game to cover, which is Ufa against Gelfand. A Catalan was played here. No, not exactly a Catalan, so it was g3, an attempt to play Catalan, bishop b4 check, bishop to e7. I think with some transposition we have... yeah, since the bishop went on c3, I would rather say it's transposition to some Queen's Indian. Bishop b7, knight d2. That's a setup you usually have in a Queen's Indian. And my guess would be that black is a tempo up. compared to, to Queen's Indian standards, because in the Queen's Indian, black usually goes bishop a6. That's the way to provoke b2, b3, and then he goes to b7. While in our game, bishop went to b7 in one go. So c5 was played, knight to e5, c takes, bishop takes, knight e5, bishop e5, and normally here you expect, let's say, a very calm fight with c and d files getting open rather soon, and very often it will be just a draw, right? But white went for e4, which gives black the possibility to sharpen the things up, right? Rook goes to d8, c takes, e takes. Well, actually it was on white, now I realize it was on white to sharpen the things up when Daniil Yufa went for it. So he takes on f6 with the bishop, goes e5, goes e6, after f e6, bishop h3, threatening a capture here, king h8, rook takes e6. Not that easy to understand what his next move is going to be. So what happens after d4, for instance, which is a very tempting move? I guess he's planning this. Which is, which is rather risky, but if it works, it works. Rook takes b6, the point being that if black goes queen d5, white has rook b7 and bishop g2, winning the exchange back, remaining with an extra pawn. Even in this case, black might have some compensation because the d pawn is quite a strong passed pawn, but maybe black has to find a way to avoid it, if it's possible, of course. Yeah, one more time, d4, rook b6. Yeah, queen h3 doesn't seem to be a good move as well. Rook takes, and well, who knows, however, here it might be something. Can't find the right place for the bishop. That's the problem, because after bishop c5 there is knight e4 with the tempo. That's a crucial tempo, because then black will get his d pawn blocked. White will play queen d3 the very next move, and then of course it's very comfortable for white. So despite bishop c5 looks active, I guess black will have to settle for something like this. Bishop f8, and then to make sure he has d4, d3 on the next move. Okay, let's see how it goes. So d4 is one forcing opportunity. Well, black might want to do something else. Not that I can see all that many moves for black. Some bishop f6 does seem to work for the time being, because rook f6, queen h3 is fairly dangerous. Yeah, bishop f6 is played. So the rook on a1 is hanging. I guess in case of rook a1, let's check it one more time. d4, rook takes b6. It's kind of same, right? No, but then black takes on h3 and goes d3, which should promise black a decent compensation. With bishop d4 possibilities. It doesn't look like black will be better here anyway. It's just that I believe he's not running a risk of being worse. Mamedjarov is preparing for a kingside attack meanwhile. So that's what we've seen. Rook a d1, rook d8 was played. e5. Knight d5, a check on h7, bishop e4, rook b8, queen to c1, and after king g8, yeah, the idea of queen c1 is to jump on d6, so that if black takes, b6, knight d6, if black takes, white takes with the pawn, and then queen h6 because the bishop is open. Right, so king had to go to g8 back, white goes bishop b1, after b6, queen c2 apparently was a bit too early, so Mamedjarov first plays h4, wants to put the pawn on h5, getting even more control over the light squares, and only then, in the right moment, he's got to play queen c2. Somewhat tough position for black, because usually the main idea to protect the king will be to play f7, f5 in some way, but here black seems to be never ready to play f5, because it's always a capture, and if knight takes, it's, one of the knights to e5 should be just really much better for white. So maybe Mamedyarov will score now. So the older team, the kings, really need to score. Well, Gelfand found a very nice maneuver. Actually, I failed to understand what does this bishop f6 do. It simply gives black's queen an extra square, which was not available initially. Queen to f7. Completely forgotten about this move, to be honest. And then, yeah, then black has all the benefits of his position, that strong d-pawn, which yet cannot be blocked. The pair of bishops, well, the dark square bishop is not that useful as for the time being, but potentially can become a really serious attacking piece. Rook e1, and yeah, and to add to this, black keeps all the benefits of his position, but he's not sacrificing the pawn. So I guess d4 is what you do. You want this pawn on d3, and you probably don't mind exchanging the bishops, because with pawn being on d3, still it's only black who can be better. I mean, that's a very dangerous passed pawn indeed. Right, anything else? Wróblewski against Artemiev, coming back to this one. After f6, Wróblewski has played knight d3, allowing bishop f3 capture, which is once again somewhat surprising. I still thought that he had to play g4. fe5, d5, bishop f3, g to f3, queen e8, f4 played, rook f5, queen goes to g4, knight to e1, knight f8, and knight f3. It looks like black will be forced to sacrifice an exchange somewhere, because, yeah, white is threatening knight d4, white is threatening bishop d3, so altogether this rook is, you know, in quite a bit of a danger. I'm not even sure how do you sacrifice an exchange here for black. I think you probably play knight d5. After knight d4 you apparently take here, takes and take with the knight, so that e6 is protected, and then yeah, and then you might have a decent compensation in this case, unless knight f5. Yeah, knight f5 is terribly unpleasant, now I realize. So heading there, threatening knight h6. In this case, however, yeah, I mean, some position like that, it's got to be, I thought it's got to be good for white. Now I'm no longer sure. There is knight e5. No, I mean, knight on f4 is pretty annoying, and, you know, other knights jumping around. So you really have to be careful. Yeah, that's what black has to do anyway. Knight goes here, knight d5, and that's what he played. That's what he played. The question is how good or how bad for white is to take on d5, and then just to play knight d4. Going to take an exchange in a little bit different fashion, because rook h5 really makes this rook somewhat misplaced, and white, I guess, can play rook c1, intending rook c7. Should be better. White should be better in this case. Let's see what Wróblewski comes up with. What he doesn't have to do, and he seems to be doing, he doesn't have to spend too much time, because it will certainly backfire. Now he's already below 4 minutes, while Artemiev, the leader, I mean, he's showing the right way to play the rapid, I think. So he plays decent, healthy, let's say sane moves, not using all that much of his time. So when the decisive moment comes that you have to calculate, he will have time enough. Right, we are shown once again Mamedyarov and Yesipenko. After h4, queen f8 was played, h5, knight c goes to e7, rook f e1. So Mamedyarov is not in rush with his attack. He understands that queen c2 cannot be prevented really. King goes to h8. What does that mean? That in case of queen c2, black will be forced to go queen g8. King h8, once again, this motif is reoccurring, so white can play knight d6, even though it's no longer that threatening, right? knight d6. I mean, the knight still cannot be taken, of course, because it's mate in 2, the g7 pawn is pinned. Well, however, white... I mean, you probably end up playing knight d6. It does feel like a very good move. But white is not threatening something immediately. Well, maybe he does, because queen c2 is a serious threat now. Let's say if black plays bishop a6, it's queen c2, and in case of queen g8, white wins with knight f7 and queen h7 mate. Yeah, I think that's precisely the kind of the position you don't want against Shahryar Mamedyarov, who is known to be, well, a very, very dangerous attacker. Queen c2 he starts with. Queen goes to g8. Now he can go knight d6, actually. Now he can go knight d6, so he's threatening knight f7. If this one is taken twice, I guess there should be something. Well, perhaps the easiest way is just to go bishop e5 after rook c6 to go queen d2 when you're threatening mate and the rook is hanging. So Mamedyarov's position looks exceptionally good. Oparin versus Shirov, I'm not sure what happens. It's been quite a few things here. cb5, ab5. Now Oparin can take the pawn on b5. I don't quite understand what's that. I know, yeah, rook a5, and after knight c7, Shirov will have the sneaky check from a7. And king h2, rook c8, and he somehow manages to, I mean, he manages all his forces. Queen takes e7, played by Grigory Oparin. Interestingly enough, so Oparin showed a great skill here as well in rapid, but against Shirov his results are terrible in this year's edition. He was the one to win the tiebreak against Shirov in the last year's edition, where Shirov had the best result from the team of kings. Oparin had the best result from the younger team, the team of princes. They played the tiebreak for the winner, and Oparin proved to be stronger. So let's see what happens this year. So far it's 2-0 for Alexei Shirov, but it's the first time he plays with the black pieces. Queen c7, however, is an unpleasant move, with all the threats of bishop takes f7. Well, the knight on d7 is obviously hanging, and it won't be that easy for black to establish coordination. I mean, basically, yeah, what happens if knight d2 is played? Let's see this. I guess bishop f7 in this case is pretty much unpleasant. Yeah, queen d7, or more than unpleasant, it's winning outright. Rook e8, queen e8, knight e6, and you got to take on e6, which is of course absolutely hopeless. Not sure if, I mean, what move black has to play. It's not that easy at all. Some bishop a6, as ugly as it looks. Yeah, I think Mamedyarov has finished his game, and Shahryar Mamedyarov has won. After knight d6, Yesipenko has taken on d6, which, as I said, was not possible. Bishop e5, knight f5, bishop d6, knight d6. He thought he has, well, he can pay an exchange and finish white's attack. I mean, white is winning in many ways here. I mean, it's like knight e5 is when nearly everything is winning. But the most energetic way was played by Shahryar Mamedyarov. So he takes on d5, and after e5 simply goes queen c7, attacking the knight and the rook. So, before this round, princes were leading +2. Now it's +1 left, as Shahryar Mamedyarov has won. Rublevsky, I guess, supposed to have a good position against Artemiev. The issue being the time, however. Well, I'm no longer sure if his position is good as well. G6. So what's black's next move? What's black's next move? Black is still not threatening to take, right? I'm actually wondering of some sort of king h1 with the idea, I mean, if it's possible to sacrifice the queen on h5 at some point, which is probably, I mean, which probably will not work, but, you know, the idea being such, c5, queen takes, give a check from g1, if king goes here, then, who knows, maybe I can just play positionally. The knight on f8, it is not that impressive, the king is in danger. We shall see. Some development in Oparin Shirov. So Alexei Shirov has played knight e back to f6, which as well looks terrible for black. Knight takes b5, rook c8. If he ends up escaping this one, I will be really surprised. But after rook c8, on the other hand, I don't really see what white has to do. I mean, he can take on f7. That's one interesting way to continue the game, because if the king takes, it's knight d6, knight takes c8. If queens are getting swapped, I think it's relatively safe for white. So black probably has to take with the bishop, and then who knows, maybe white will... Yeah, it does look like white has a very strong attack. So bishop f7 is one thing, but maybe black will not really take on f7. Okay, Oparin takes the pawn on d6, rook takes a5. It's a pawn up for white, but no longer black pieces are hanging. No longer black pieces are hanging, so well, very interesting position indeed. Bishop takes f7. Is this a move here? I mean, it's always tempting, right? With all black pieces being on the other side of the board, it's always tempting to sacrifice something to get to this king on g8, which lacks defenders. Bishop f7. Okay, if king goes away, it's already 2 pawns, so we might want to stop right here. But if king takes on f7, what happens then? Queen e6, I thought. Then king f8, knight d6 is probably bad. I mean, bishop d5 saves from mate on f7, but even queen e7 check followed by knight c8 should be fine for white. So 2 pawns and the rook against 2 minor pieces, and I think some attack is still left. But the real issue with this sacrifice might be black's king g6, knight d6, and who knows how this finishes. Not even queen f5 is threatening, right? Alright, some things going on in Ufa Gelfand. So Gelfand is down to less than 2 minutes. He's in exchange up, however. I don't know how this has happened. I think somewhere around there, that moment we've seen. Rook f8, bishop e6, rook to c7, rook a b8, queen g4, queen to d3. d4 was played and Ufa takes on b7, goes bishop f5. His next move being queen h5, by the way. Queen b5 was played. Okay, so now queen h5 is answered with g6. The queens are getting swapped. Black is obviously much better. Well, perhaps the better move will be queen h3 here, so that if black plays h6, he creates all those light square weaknesses, I mean, for a lifetime. And while white might not have an immediate compensation, well, but I think Boris has blundered this one. I'm not sure if it's right, but I think he has blundered bishop h7, or maybe there was no defense. Now I realize that what was the real threat. Bishop takes h7, king h7, queen e4 check, king goes to h8, queen b7, d3. White is a pawn up. Black tries to prove the compensation with his passed pawn on d3. Really not sure. Well, Artemiev wins once again. That's incredible. Artemiev has won once again. Sergei Wróblewski. Wróblewski simply can't stop losing. So it's 1-1 in this match, and the other 2 games don't look optimistic for the King's team. Here, I believe it should be compensation for Boris Gelfand, but he's below 2 minutes, and Oparin just went to take on f7, entering the wild complications here. It's up to Shirov now to take or not to take on f7. I think I would try to take if there is no direct way to lose. So like check king g6, I assume. Knight d6. Well, there are some ideas of rook e3, rook g3, however. Yeah, king f7 taken, so that's the most exciting, I would say, the most exciting game. Gelfand is trying to exchange the queens meanwhile. Well, he probably should save it, but I don't see the way he can win this one. So it's all the hopes now. All the team pins with Alexei Shirov. So bishop f7, king takes f7. Apparently thinking he's down to 1 minute only. So remarkable scores so far. Artemiev has won against Wróblewski 3-0. Oparin, I think, has won against Wróblewski 3-0. So that's, yeah, it's a really, really terrible score for Sergei Wróblewski, first of all. Rook e7, king goes to g8. So that's a clever check. So he starts with rook e7 check. Now he's going to give another check on e6. King, well, it's up to Shirov to choose. I think king goes to h8, and then knight d6 happens. Then knight d6 happens. Or queen f7, knight d6. Queen f7, rook g8, right? So, and knight d6, there is bishop d5. It's still unclear. It's still unclear. Queen e6 played. Shirov has to decide. King h7 has a drawback that white can give a check on f5, then put the queen on g6. So I guess you go king h8, knight d6, bishop d5, knight f7, then king can go to h7, it seems, even though there is queen f5. Well, it's actually terribly dangerous, right? Knight h6 check, king goes to f8. Still can't understand what is that. King h8 and knight d6 played. King h8 and knight d6 played. Now, can he play some other move and not bishop d5? Because for the time being, knight f7 is not such a huge threat. Let's say rook f8. Now, of course, white can grab on d7, can do many other things, but knight f7 is not such a big threat. Black can go to h7 because he's got f5 covered in this version. So this game can go either way, while Gelfand, I think, is in a serious trouble, about to lose his second pawn. Well, what Shirov just played? Queen a7 check. Okay, so he wants to get active himself. He wants to keep a possibility to go queen f2 at some point. King h2. King h2, well, we'll see what's gonna happen. I think it's a really problematic position for Boris Gelfand, the game we are shown. Yeah, let me show what happens here. So the d3 pawn was, considered, I've considered this one to be a dangerous pass pawn, but somehow white is in time to get closer to it and just to stop it. Here perhaps bishop e1 followed by check would offer some chances for a draw in the rook endgame. Gelfand decided to play d2 and then he went back rook d7. I'm still not sure what happens in case of king e2, check, king d3. Rook e1 I assume, but then white has king c2 and then he's going to take on d2 next move. I think quite a problematic position for Boris Gelfand, this one. So it's okay, let's go to Shirov and Oparin, because this is very tense, very sharp. After check, queen f2 was played, knight takes b7, so white wins the material back, but no longer he has the attack. Queen f4, king goes to h1, rook to e5, queen f7, rooks are getting exchanged, and now it's black's turn to come up with some attack, using the momentum that white is somewhat discoordinated. So I can think of moves like knight e5, rook e8 is the move, rook c2 played by Alexei Shirov. Rook c2 attacking the d2 knight, and guess what, if the knight is moving, then I think black is getting there with some queen g3, knight e4. So an interesting twist of a plot. Queen goes to d6, so this way if black exchanges, and Shirov decided to exchange and to take on b2, which will be a draw, and the draw was agreed. I think at some point both players missed chances for a win. Okay, it's 1.5, and Ufa against Gelfand, this is what happens. After rook d7, h4 was played by Daniil Yuffa. I think Boris Gelfand might not hold this one. Rook e7, rook to e1, king c2, b4 was played, knight d2, rook e2. So white is a pawn up. Well, black has some compensation, but no, it's not clear if it's enough. a3 is a possibility, in fact. But then black simply takes f2. Yeah, first of all, you have to decide what you do about the f2 pawn. Because you might want to do this, king d3, that's what he ends up doing. King d3, rook takes f2. And now, for instance, knight e4 gives you a rook endgame pawn up, which you might not win. This and just something, king h7, maybe a5 immediately, maybe a5, then come with the king. Even though I'm not sure if it's a draw. Yeah, rook d4 is an annoying move here, and with rook a4 to follow. Yeah, I think the kings might lose yet another match. How about princesses and the queens? I think 2 games are finished. It's 1.5-half in favor of the queens, so they are still pretty much in the lead. 2 games are still in progress. Goltseva-Grabuzova is sharp, and so is Kovalevska against Dimitrova. I don't know how it's gonna finish. I don't think queens can lose this round, and it will be only 2 rounds to go. Right, so we still stay at that one, which did develop into the way I thought. Knight e4 now, and Gelfand doesn't take on a2, he goes rook g2. So keeps the rook active. In case of knight c3, he's planning to take on g3 with a check. White has played king c4. White has played king c4, and now he's threatening to take on c3. It's still bad, it seems. Still bad, it seems. And yeah, and another plan for white is to go knight g5. I mean, at some point it might be really dangerous. Bishop e5 played by Boris Gelfand. So he has bishop f6 in case of knight g5. But how about this check first, and then a check from g5? You've got to play king g6. Ah, well, there is no mate still. Right. Bishop e5, rook to d5. Turns out you can't take here because of rook g5 and rook c2. Rook c2, king d3, white is winning. Rook d5, bishop c7, it's got to be winning for white. Got to be winning for white. With a move like rook c5 maybe. King takes b4 is here as well. Rook c5 seems to be annoying, right? Well, many things. Many things. And king takes b4. Rook takes a2. Okay. Now I think white should be objectively winning. Objectively, white should be winning. g4 maybe? I mean, somehow you want this, I mean, you want those pawns on light squares and defend it. Let's see how to do it with white. Yeah, what I thought. Okay, rook d7. Rook d7, where the bishop goes. Because now, bishop e5, that's still fine right now. Rook e7, when it's really unpleasant. This bishop on seemingly an empty board can't really find a good place. Boris puts it on b6, so the bishop is protected, but now he really has to worry about this king. He really has to worry about this king. And for the time being, white's pawns are not in danger. I guess h5 might be a dangerous move. Well, Yuffa plays knight g5. Not threatening the back rank just yet, but potentially he will. And the point being that if black plays g6, knight will go back, and the threat of knight f6 is terribly strong. Rook g2 was played. So I think it's the last game which is left, so we can switch to the camera view. So we can switch to the camera view closer to, yeah. Rook g2. Rook g2 was played, and yeah, let's see. Well, and he went back to d3. He goes back to d3, so keeping the g3 pawn protected. Let's see what's gonna happen now. Comes with the king to d5. Now, knight g5, rook g2, that's what has happened. Now they are actually both short on time, and I don't really see how white can lose this one, but who knows, when it will come to, you know, making moves on seconds, anything can happen. Rook e2, as we've seen in Mamdyarov's previous game. Rook to e2. Yeah, in the ladies section, by the way, we still have one game in progress, but the queens already have won this round, 2.5 they are leading, and Goltseva against Grabuzova, only Grabuzova can win. So it might be a crushing and maybe a decisive victory for the queens. With 2 rounds to go, it won't be easy. I mean, they must be leading like +6. Right, so let's go back there. So a couple of times the position got repeated, and finally Ufa puts the king on f4. It's still tough, right? Rook to e7. So at least black managed to find some harmony to consolidate his forces. So now bishop e3. Yeah, the question is, what about the rook endgame? I guess it's closer to a draw than to anything else, because those pawns on the queen side, they are most likely to come off. I mean, if it would have been the same pawn, let's say pawn on b5 for both sides, then I would rather say that the rook endgame is not that late. Knight h3, but you do not avoid the rook endgames in such a way, because your knight is practically non. I mean, black can have a rook endgame immediately with a check here, knight f4, a capture, and then just to go to 7th rank. Well, Boris decided to play a5, which is a more practical move. Knight f4, and now I think it must be a draw. You just take the horsey. Yeah, bishop takes. Let's see, bishop takes. I guess in order to have at least some chance, you take with the rook, and then rook goes here, and it's a check. And I mean, king g5, it's always a check from b5. So king goes to h3, a4, and it's a draw. Well, white has taken with the pawn, which still has to be a draw. What you do here is rook b7. Yeah, rook b7, and then maybe just standing. Rook b7. If you find time to play rook b5. Yeah, okay. Rook here, rook b4. That's what I wanted to say. So if you have a time to play rook b4 and to exchange everything. Okay, h5 takes king g5. What's that? Well, actually, it is a bit dangerous. a4, let's see if Gelfand is in time. Let's see if Gelfand is in time, because he's not... I mean, oh, he's right in time for a Philidor's position. Okay. He's right in time for so-called Philidor's position, right? Takes a check on c7, king g8, f5, and rook a6. Rook a6, and it's, I mean, h5 pawn is irrelevant. It's so-called Philidor's position, which is one of the basic theoretical draws in rooks and pawns endgame. f6, rook to a1, and it's just a draw. It's just a draw. And it's a bit surprising that Iljufa tries to prove the opposite. So it will be a draw in this round, and this will mean that the youngsters are still leading with +2 score. King h6, I don't quite understand what does that mean. Rook to f1, okay. And yeah, and the draw was agreed. Well, it's been a lot of stuff going on in this game. I think we still have to check the ladies section because we still have one game going. It's Ekaterina Goltseva with white. She has the rook against a lot of stuff of Tatiana Grabuzova, namely 2 minor pieces, bishop and the knight, and 2 pawns. So it's really, really problematic for white, because with 1 pawn I think it's got to be a draw, but since black has 2 pawns on the board, there is no such idea as sacrifice and exchange on b5, for instance. The other pawn will be alive. Well, a check given, king e3, king to c3. I thought, you know, this could have been an idea, to take on b7 and then to take on b5, just to check black's ability to mate with knight and bishop. Okay, king c3, knight d3, rook goes to h2. Now the b pawns will start moving. I guess it's got to be b4. Well, yeah, let's see. b4 played. Now in case of king c4, it's a check. I mean, somehow these pawns are getting a lot of tempi. b4 king c2 was played. Now let's not forget there is a threat of rook h3. Bishop goes to a4. King b1. Now, what do we do with black? We probably bring the king to c3 first. Yeah, that's exactly what Tatiana Grabuzova is doing. King d4 with the idea to play king c3. Yeah, it is winning. No doubt it is winning. As well, white is very short on time. I don't think it's an important factor, but still. Rook h7. Attacking the b pawn. Now it really, really depends, because I think, yeah, you want to keep the pawn alive. Yeah, absolutely. Bishop c6. Bishop c6. White probably plays king c2, trying to stop the b pawn for as long as possible, but black has bishop to d5, and then the pawn will end up being on b3 anyway. A check on h4 was given, which of course is totally supported by black, because king gets to c3. So there should be some stalemate idea. I guess the last chance for white will be to try to find some stalemate. Rook h7, I don't know what rook h7 does. Time to go b3, I guess. Time to go b3. Yeah. b3 played. And then at some point you just move, okay, rook c7. Now you just move your knight to c4, like knight e5. And then knight c4, and it wins almost immediately. Knight to c5, unpinning the bishop is also good, because next move bishop e4 is already a threat. Yeah, maybe this one just wins immediately. It's knight to c5, and then you still keep an idea to go knight e4, king a1. Okay, king a1, kind of a last, no, I mean, I don't know what the trap is, but after b2, no traps left. King here, bishop d5 check, and after king a3, guess what? b1 knight would have been mate on the board. It's a little bit pity that white did not play king a3. Right, so the round is over, and the queens are, well, having a crushing victory of 3.5 versus half a point, so I think they practically secured the overall win in the match, while the kings have to pull, well, have to score some points in the last 2 rounds in order not to lose the match which initially looked quite well for them. So still, well, the main disaster in the team of kings is Sergei Rublevsky, who simply cannot find his play. I mean, he keeps losing in rapid. Right, I think it will be it. So 2 more rounds to go. Next round will start roughly in 20 minutes. 5:30 local time here in Moscow still, so please be back for round 3 of today. I mean, it's round number 7 altogether of Rapid Chess. Thanks for watching. Please make sure you are coming back in 20 minutes. Welcome back everyone, welcome back to Nutcracker, the Battle of Generations. To remind you, today was the day where Princess took the lead in the very first round of Rapid, and well, with 2 more rounds to go, now it's a very tough task for the Kings to level the score and try to win the match. So, in this round we have, well, I think the most principal battle for the Rapid, Shirov against Artemiev. Artemiev is by far the leader in the Rapid portion of the tournament. I think he only dropped half a point in 6 games, so 5.5 out of 6. Fantastic score, really, winning 2-0 against Shahryar Mamedyarov. Shirov is the only player from the older team, from the team of Kings, who did not lose a single game. Yeah, so that's the scoreboard. As you can see, Kings are trailing 2 points, 29 to 27 is the score. In the other tournament, however, Queens are in a very good position, leading 5 points with only 8 games to be played. So most likely there won't be any intrigue there, and I'm still wondering if there will be intrigue in Kings versus Princes. So the round is in progress already. As I said, that's the most principal game here. Shirov Artemiev, Shirov having the white pieces, so a Poles and Sicilian with bishop d3, knight e7, not the most popular line here. Bishop e3, knight e c6, knight to d2. Artemiev has taken on d4 and went knight to c3. Knight to c6, bishop c3 played by Alexei Shirov, so keeps an eye on g7 pawn, kind of preventing black from developing normally. I think the plan for white is to go queen e2 and then to try to castle, long maybe. We'll see how it goes. The other pairs are Yufa against Mamedyarov, Gelfand has the white pieces against Oparin, and Yesipenko has the white pieces against Sergei Rublevsky. Right, not sure where we're going to start. b5 was played by Vladislav Artemiev. The threat is b5, b4 to trap the bishop. I guess, yeah, so queen e2 is not possible. Maybe knight f3 is just good. So that after b4, bishop will go to d2, more positional approach here. No, Shirov goes for b3. He really wants this bishop to be on long diagonal. Really wants this bishop to be on long diagonal. Yeah, I wonder if a move like bishop b4 is possible, so that if white takes on g7, it will be rook g8, bishop b2, rook takes g2. Who knows, maybe that's an option. Black can try to develop the queen first to g5, like queen g5 in case of knight f3 to go queen h5. And then once again keeping in mind bishop b4, which will lead to a bishop exchange. Queen c7 is a decent move, which is, I mean, it's a typical move for Paulsen, plus, I mean, some tactical possibilities there. Artemiev has played bishop b4. So the principal line, of course, is to take g7 with the bishop, after rook e8 to go bishop b2, after rook g2 to play queen f3 with the tempo attacking the g2 rook. Let's see what Alexei Shirov comes up with. I mean, the safe way is just to take on b4, make a castle, but then of course white has no advantage whatsoever. Interesting. Right, let's check the other games. Gelfand has the white pieces against Oparin, and one more time the same line as Boris played against Yosipenko, I believe. e5, knight e4, knight f3, knight c6. Interestingly enough, it has transposed, I believe, into some position in Gioco Piano Italian. No, not quite the Gioco Piano, but c3 d4 line. Bishop f5, bishop e3, knight takes, b takes, knight goes to a5, knight d2. So white is getting ready for g4, f4 once again, and also controlling the c4 square helps. Well, doesn't look like Gelfand has all that prepared though. He has spent a couple of minutes. Daniil Yufa seemingly has a very attractive position against Shahryar Mamediyarov, with typical Catalan pressure, black's pair of bishops being not that relevant factor here. The relevant factor is that black has difficulties playing c6, c5, even though Shahryar is playing very, very fast. It was this line with bishop b4 check and bishop d6. I mean, it's much rarer move than bishop to e7, even though it was played by strong players like Kramnik and I think a few others on the very top level. Queen c2, c6, and then there is this idea with bishop g5 and just to take on f6, knight bd2. I guess, yeah, I remember looking at this position. I'm not sure which move we've considered to be a move for black here. b6, e4. Mamediyarov takes on e4, bishop b7. Yeah, and then, as I said, it will be not easy for black to get c6, c5 going. Rook f d1, queen e7, preparing for c5. White reacts with knight e5. Rook a c8, you have to guard the c6 pawn. Rook a c1, rook f d8, and white has played a2, a3, preparing for b4 and c5. So black can play bishop a8. Black can play bishop a8. Preparing c6, c5. Not sure what's gonna happen in this case. We are shown Sergei Rublevsky, the player who did not score any points so far today, so 0 out of 2. Mainly, we can say, because of Rublevsky, the kings are trailing in this match, so, well, his result is really, really bad so far. Well, a typical queen's isolated pawn position on the board. White just, yeah, that was an interesting moment. Bishop c1, knight fd5. White has played f4, opting for f5. Rublevsky has played g6, knight e4, and rook goes to c8. So I think with pawn on f4, all the ideas for white, all the aggressive ideas for white, connected with playing f4, f5 at some point. But it's not that easy to make it work, because black usually recaptures with this pawn, and rook f5, I mean, first of all, there is no guarantee it works if black takes the rook, and the other thing is that black is not forced to take. It's still not enough of a threat. Yosipenko has played knight g5, so this knight gets to the king side, potentially can be sacrificed somewhere around, you know, f7 or e6. This should be dangerous, right? Knight f4, bishop f4. Yeah, the queen is hanging with a check, so no other moves for white, but bishop f4, bishop g5, well, who knows? Who knows? I'm yet to see how this one is refuted. Perhaps like that. Queen takes and then knight takes f7. If rook takes f7, white can take on e6 with the queen, right? So that f7 is hanging. Or not. Yeah, there is no bishop d5 because the rook is hanging. Right, so knight f4 is not an option for Sergei Wróblewski. Then he has to do something about f7. Has to do something about f7 being weak. Happens to be not easy. In some positions you would actually consider sacrificing an exchange on c4, but I don't really see where's the compensation here. I mean, you can get one pawn for an exchange, but it still feels like white is better here. Rook to c7 played by Wróblewski, so indirectly protecting f7 just in case. So yeah, it is a solid move. Quite like it. Rook c7, possibly queen c8 later on, covering the e6 square, and then bishop a6, intending to swap the light square bishops. Let's see how Gelfand against Oparin develops. Gelfand got a phalanx of his kingside pawns going. The rook c8 f4 was played, c5 g4, bishop d7, the bishop swapped, f5, c takes d4, and interestingly enough Gelfand decided to take with the bishop. So making sure bishop won't be out of play, right? So if you take with the pawn, then I mean black gets some rook c3s and stuff. So he decided to take with the bishop, then knight will go to f3, f6 is already an unpleasant threat. Looks attractive for Boris Gelfand, this one. Some exchanges happen in Ufa Mamedyarov. Interestingly enough, after a3, Mamedyarov has played a5. Queen e3, and another risky move by Shahryar Mamedyarov. I have to say, he really wants to play for a win, but I'm not sure if what he does is the right thing to do, because he has played a4. He could go c5, it seems, and after the exchange on b7, it would have been roughly equal position, I guess. He wants more, he wants to play for a win, so he goes a4 here, allowing c5. B takes, d takes, bishop e5, queen e5. Mamedyarov swaps the rooks on d1 and goes bishop a4. Okay, so he'll put the bishop on b5, guarding the c6 pawn as well as a4. But white still has a very nice outpost on d6. So I'm not a big fan of his decision, to be honest. It's like rook d6, bishop b5, some queen d4 is possible, just to make sure white is controlling like all the files, and then even bishop f1 might be somewhat annoying. Right, Yesipenko is still thinking versus Wróblewski after rook c7, and we are switched back to the very top board, where Shirov is fighting against Artemiev. After bishop b4, Shirov decided to take on g7, went back to b2 after rook g2. Instead of queen f3, he plays queen to h5, bishop b7, and now it's a very tempting move, of course, to castle long. Well, he can play king f1 as well. That's an interesting try, right? King f1, if rook g5, I guess queen h7 is good for white, because you can't really take the knight. There is queen h8 followed by bishop f6. Yeah, king f1 is actually a tempting move. If bishop takes, king takes g2, black might have some compensation, but I don't think he's in time. It's like queen e7 with the intention to castle long and hope to get some attack against this king, but I don't really believe it's something serious. Even rook g1 is possible. King f1 is on the board. King f1 is played, so now Artemiev really has to show what he had in mind. He can still try to go for an endgame with queen g5. But, hang on a second, in this case queen f3 traps the exchange. So he's got to be careful even in this case. Queen f3. Yeah, and g2 rook is trapped. Isn't he just like much worse after king f1? Because I'm not sure what he has to do. Okay, Gelfand against Oparin. Coming back to this one, rook fe8 was played, knight went to f3, rook to c4. Yeah, the point of rook fe8 is that black wants to be able to play bishop f8 in case of f6. Knight f3, rook to c4. I think white has to spend some time consolidating, so playing a move like queen d3 and then most likely rook a to e1. Or should it be queen e2? Yeah, could be queen e2 as well, with the idea to bring the queen to g2. We'll see. Queen g5 was played, interestingly enough, in Shirov Artemiev. I mean, that's a surprise, to be honest, because after king f1, queen g5, Shirov decided that it would be too dangerous to play queen f3. I know, it was not trapping the rook. The rook could go to g4. What am I saying? Yeah, rook g4 was a possibility. So Shirov decided to swap the queens on g5 and then to play knight f3. Still, the feeling is that white is somewhat better in this case. So he will be the first one to use. He'll be the first one to use the g file after king e2, rook g1, and possible march of an h pawn. But we have to switch to Rublevsky and Yesipenko because Yesipenko went to sacrifice on f7. So rook c7, the move played by Sergei Rublevsky, and Andrei Yesipenko replies with knight f7, rook f7, knight e6. So this way he gets 2 pawns and the rook against black's 2 knights. Queen to d6. Okay, I guess knight c7 will be played. Queen takes c7, and then a move like f5 should be considered. So white obviously wants to open the black king. The f5 move, the point being that if black takes, white takes on f5 with the rook, and he has queen g4 check. Yeah, f5 is on the board. It's very standard, actually. It's very standard. And then, well, having the knight on this b4 square, which seems to be, I mean, it's a very nice outpost for knight and everything, but it's a little bit too far from the main war theater, so to speak, right? So you would really prefer this knight to be somewhere around this king, preferably on f6. So now black desperately needs some trades. I mean, well, it's once again, it's a bit controversial. I mean, you want some trades to happen in order that your king becomes a bit less exposed, but at the same time you do not want the trades, because the more trades happen, the better it's for the side with the rook, right? In the endgame, it's known that usually rook and 2 pawns are stronger than 2 minors. Gf5, so it's even not that clear if white is forced to take the pawn on f5, because he has alternatives. He can play bishop f4, for instance, so that if knight f4 happens, he takes it with the rook, and in case of queen f4, he takes the bishop on e7, also threatening the... no, knight d5, knight d5, yeah, just missed knight d5. Gf5, no, rook f5 has to be played. Not sure what black is planning to do in this case, because, I mean, you got to take this one, right? A check, and maybe some tricks like this. I mean, it's very hard to believe, but bishop g5 and bishop c8, can this work? It's really, really hard to believe this one. Bishop d2 played by Andrei Yesipenko. Somewhat weird move, if you ask me. He probably wants, to fight for a d5 square. So bishop b4 becomes a threat. Bishop b4, black will have to take with the bishop, and then d5 knight is no longer that stable. So what to do for black now? I guess queen d7 is what you play, so that you protect the f5 pawn, you give extra protection to the d5 knight. then maybe next move will be bishop f8. I think once again one of those situations where objectively Wróblewski's position has to be good. It's just the, you know, the overall mood for, first of all, with him like losing game after game after game, and so he obviously lacks confidence, and the time situation, which so far is favorable for Wróblewski, so he's playing pretty fast, he's on 10 minutes still. Will this be the moment of a big swing if the Kings will win with the high score? Well, actually, Boris Gelfand seems to be completely winning, to be honest. I mean, he is an exchange up. Black has one pawn for an exchange, but White enters with all the pieces, right? Rook e1 being a threat. Queen f3, well, it's Black to move. Black probably has to play bishop h4. I don't know if it's good, but he has to stop rook e1, otherwise he'll be just lost. Ah, wait. Did I just miss this one? Did Boris miss this one? Ah, yeah, knight e2 and queen f5, yeah. I got it. Knight c4, f take. Oh, where the rook got sacrificed? e6, f e6, knight e5, and Black decided not to move the rook away. Yeah, the queen is... So did he... Yeah, rook c4 was just a blunder, it seems. e6, knight e5 wins an exchange. Okay, that's what happened. Queen f3 is not a blunder because, yeah, because knight d2 is right with queen f5. So I do think Black needs bishop h4 to stop rook e1. And then, I don't know what White is planning to do. Maybe rook to d1 in this case. You know, covering the d2 square and preparing to attack the d5 pawn. Has to be winning for Gelfand objectively, but of course he has to watch out. I mean, it's not trivial. Still not trivial. Shahryar Mamedyarov might be in a bit of a trouble, actually. Well, bishop f6 played by Grigory Aparin. A bit of a surprise move, to be honest. A bit of a surprise move. And, okay, I mean, various possibilities for White, of course. We shall see it later. Now let's go to Mamedyarov and Ufa, because, as I said, I don't quite like this transformation Mamedyarov went for. f4, queen c7, h4, and it turns out, yeah, I mean, he's quite passive here. Rook d8, queen d4, he decided to trade f6, and White just played g5. I mean, maybe he's in time, like, to take here, to go king f7, but still, it really, really feels being suspicious. H takes g5. Interestingly, you can make an argument for f takes g5, so that if Black comes with the king, he has to deal potentially with the other passed pawn on h file. But Ufa took with the h pawn, king f7 happened. Still will be tough. Still will be tough for Mamedyarov. Let's see what happens in Shirov Artemiev. As I said, Artemiev is by far the leader, the best player in the Rapid, and that was clear. If we check his Rapid and Blitz rating, it's even higher of his quite high rating in classical time control. So the endgame happened, knight f3, rook g4, king e2, castles, rook hg1, and Artemiev went for f5. Attacking this one. So if ef5 happens, I guess Black simply captures with the pawn. In case of bishop takes, I'm guessing a check is what Black is planning. Not sure. It might be that the whole thing is incorrect, but let's see. So far he manages to do the same thing in every single game. Sometimes his position, I mean Artemiev, sometimes his position is somewhat suspicious, but he manages to put the opponent in very unpleasant situation of finding the precise moves, being in a time pressure. And now the time has come for Alexei Shirov. He's down to 3 minutes only. He's of course a very good player when it comes to, you know, when it comes to sharpness, when it comes to sacrifices, but still, you know, playing a position like that with limited time is not something that you actually want. So, I mean, it does look like he is looking for the way to, you know, to avoid unnecessary complications. I wonder if he can. Because e5, well, gives black this moment of stability, right? So you actually want to take on f5, I believe. Rook takes g4, played by Alexei Shirov. F takes g4, knight goes to g5, attacking the h7 pawn. Potentially rook g1 is an idea for white. Yeah, white's position looks good. White's position looks good. I think he's about to win the h7 pawn. But, you know, and with the limited time, you don't really know what is going to happen. Well, Gelfand is still an exchange up with very good chances to convert. Mamedyarov is in trouble, however, and I'm yet not sure what happens in the game of Sergei Wróblewski. Let's check it. Yosipenko against Wróblewski. It's for a change. Yosipenko, who is short on time. Wróblewski still having solid 8 minutes after queen d7. Rook f3 was played. King went to h8. Bishop takes, a check on e5, and rook goes to g7. So white gets to take on f5. But now the knight is finally unpinned, and there might be some tricks. Knight e3 I'm talking about, because yeah, the knight e3 move attacks the d1 rook, the f5 rook, and a check on b8. It's awkward for black to play a move like bishop c8, but still, it's got to be good. Rook g3 played by Andrei Yosipenko, so implying some extra pressure on g7. The bishop on b4 is not doing all that much, so I wonder what Wróblewski can do about it. It's like... yeah, it has to be said, bishop d6, which does seem to be a tempting move, doesn't work because of rook g7, and then, yeah, if you take, it's a queen d6, and no jumps with this knight, because queen b8 or queen d8. Still not an easy position to play with black. Checking the ladies section, meanwhile we have 3 draws already, so the queens are more or less safe, right? They are leading +5 and they made 3 draws, so 5 games left. One of them, well, pretty equal game between Strutinska and Goltseva, plus 4 games in the next round. The princesses have to win all 5 in order to tie the match. I don't really see this happening, so I think intrigue is that in this game, in this match, but I'm not sure about the match between kings and princes, because it does seem that, well, the kings are getting a chance. Let's see what happens here. Bishop h5, check, g6, queen f4, and Mamedyarov went for king e8. I think his position is bad. I think his position is just bad. Bishop g6 check, king f7, and then just moving the bishop. White is left with 2 passed pawns. I think this should be good, should be winning for Daniil Yufa. I don't really see what Shahryar Mamedyarov has. I'm wondering what he has blundered, because after queen f4 he could still go there, it seems. He could still go there. I don't really see... oh, well, maybe queen e5 and bishop g4 was an issue in this case. It goes really bad for Mamedyarov. Well, I'm no longer sure if Gelfand's position is that easy to win. I'm not convinced with Gelfand's decision to leave a pawn in the bishop instead of a knight, so that's what has happened there. He's still in control of the time. After bishop f6, I was still thinking of rook e1, to be honest. I'm not sure if it would have been a fortress in that case. Gelfand went rook f2, after which knight e5 happened. Knight takes, queen takes, rook d1, h6. So now Boris can swap the queens like that. bishop c3, but black still keeps the reasonable chance to hold. The bishop is especially strong, covering g7. Okay, we can... Yeah, let's see what happens here. Will Wróblewski lose yet another game? He ended up, after rook g3, he ended up playing knight c7. d5 was played. So one more time, there is no bishop d6 because of rook takes g7. I don't quite like what he did. Don't quite like what he did. Knight c7, well, seems to be just a bad move. Ah, there was a threat of rook g7 followed by queen e8, so that's what... No, not exactly. Not sure. Knight c7, d5. Now, once again, it looks like a white has it. Because d6 you can't really prevent. And this will give white a very dangerous passed pawn in addition to all the other benefits white has in this position. He can't stop d6. I mean, that's just purely bad. Yeah, a check, bishop f2 for instance, and I think white is fine just swapping everything, playing d6, and the pawn cannot be stopped. Can't be stopped at all. I mean, it's just completely winning. I mean, it's just some sort of a blackout the whole tournament for Sergei Wróblewski. I mean, he's trying hard, but he can't find the moves. He can't find his play. He keeps losing game after game after game. Right, and okay, bishop c5 check is played. King goes to h1, I assume. And actually, now checking Shirov's position, I'm also not sure if it's any better for Alexei Shirov anymore. It's really strange things are happening. I think, well, it turns out that the youngsters are simply better prepared for a rapid time control. d7 played by, well, that's amazing. Just look at it. d7, Daniil Yufa has spent, well, quite a lot of time, and he comes up with d7 move. He wants to trade the queens, I assume. He wants to trade the queens and what? So king d7, he insists on this one being a winning position, which he might be right, because black did it all himself. Black got all his pawns being weak. Very interesting move, d7. So if queen takes, however, I'm yet to see how white is winning. I mean, there is a check here, king d8. And he wants to trade the queens like this. Well, actually, it is a very problematic position for... Very problematic position for Mamedyarov. Might be lost position for Mamedyarov. Let's see. Well, Wróblewski gave a check, so coming back to Wróblewski. Oh no, Shirov is also interesting. He's on 1 minute, Alexei Shirov, so he has to play fast. After knight g5, apparently bishop e7 was the move he missed. At least it looks so. h4 was played. Rook g8, rook to h1, and after h5 he has played f4. So will h-pawn actually become weak? That's the question, right? Because, I mean, it can be anything. It can be that the pawn is just weak, but I don't really see. I mean, knight b4, you probably end up playing knight f2, where black can... I mean, he's not in a rush to take on d3. He just goes there. The h-pawn is well protected. Black is doing more than fine. I'd say black is doing more than fine. And there are other moves. Rook to g3, played by Artemiev. Not yet sure what this is supposed to mean. case of... Okay, some tricky tricks, like in case of king f2, he's probably planning for some move like that. Let's see, Mamedov against u4, I think. Oh no, Wróblewski. Is he holding? King h1, bishop f8, d6, f4 played by Sergei Wróblewski. So he kind of wants to claim that the knight on c7 is not hanging for real. But how about rook takes? How about rook takes g7? Ah yeah, there are some motives with bishop takes g2, so bishop g7 in this case, and queen e7, the move I thought originally would win the game for white, doesn't seem to be that good because of a check on b7, right? And then a check here, even though after king f2 there isn't a single check. Okay, I don't really know what goes on. It looked very, very optimistic for the team of kings, but now I'm no longer sure if they will make a draw here. I mean, forget winning. I'm not sure if they will make a draw in this round, and it's already +2. So if they lose this one, even with a minimal score, I'm sure the match is over. Rook takes g7 is on the board, bishop g7, and as I said, queen e7 is probably a killer. Queen e7 leaves white with, leaves black with no moves, I guess, because this sacrifice only looks spectacular, but it doesn't really work. Doesn't really work. Let's see, maybe there is a hidden resource for Wróblewski, but honestly I don't see anything. I wonder if this gives him some chance, like bishop c6. Ah no, it's just purely bad, right? Rook check and bishop f7, or even bishop b5. No, that's resignable. Back to Shirov and Artemiev, where Shirov is very short on time, and I guess the position is also bad. Bishop e3, a pawn down, so it seems that Artemiev will win nearly all the games he played in Rapid. Bishop to c3, I don't know what has happened, but it's really... I know, it's not so it's equal number of pawns, it's just, it looked so, with black being that active, and it felt like this f-pawn is an extra pawn for black. Maybe it's not that pessimistic, in fact, for Alexei Shirov. Bishop e1 is what he's planning to do, to chase the rook away from the g3 square. And they came to a moment where they both play on 1 minute. Looking at the game between Gelfand and Oparin, I no longer think Gelfand is going to win, so really something has happened to Boris Gelfand, it seems. I don't really see him winning this one. Wróblewski has played queen c6, and I think after bishop d5 it's just over. I think it's just over after bishop d5, because yeah, the problem is that knight d5 you lose to queen d8 and mate on the next move. No, there is no move simply for Sergei Wróblewski. The back rank is the problem. The back rank is the problem now. There is no move whatsoever. Disastrous performance for Wróblewski. 0 out of 3 it's going to be. Okay, back to Shirov and Artemiev. Shirov makes his move on 12 seconds. Knight d4, bishop went to e1. Bishop went to e1, let's see. Rook goes to g7. Yeah, really annoying concentration of black pieces here. Yes, Sergei Wróblewski has lost yet another game. A really disastrous tournament. He has scored like 2 points only out of out of, well, how many it is? 11. 2 out of 11. Who could have imagined that? Let's see. Artemiev made the move with 1 second only. That's incredible. Bishop f2, rook f7. 1 second only. I mean, I know people who can constantly do this, but yeah, knight g5, rook g7, knight h3. So Shirov quickly repeats the position. Knight goes there. Yeah, and I think we just got a theoretical draw in Gelfand against Oparin. The game, of course, will go on, but the position on the board should be drawish. After knight e6, Shirov has played king e2. Rook to g2, king f1. Let's see. Rook g4. The knight on h3 is kinda got stuck. So I mean, if you take king e2, and the problem is this rook g3 move. Not only it protects the pawn, knight d4 is what black is threatening, as well as rook takes h3. So once again, really uncomfortable position for Shirov. Rook h5. What's that? Just he wants his rook on 5th rank for some reason. Maybe rook f5 is what he's looking for. Rook to g7. Yeah, the knight is terrible on h3. Gelfand still can't find the way. I guess it's just a fortress for Grigory Oparin. And very interesting game for Mamedyarov and Yufa, because yeah, Mamedyarov had to sacrifice the bishop for White's passed pawn. It was an interesting moment. c3, and now if White takes, Black is in time to take on c3 and to come with the king. But king e2, e5, king to d1, and Black is not in time, it seems. Takes on b2, I think king c2, I mean, it has to be winning. So 2-0 it will be for Jancis, and that will mean the intrigue is over. Let's see if at least Shirov will hold his own. Takes rook h3. Don't really see any idea. Any idea I can't see in the game between Gelfand and Oparin. It's just theoretical draw, just to show you. But yeah, but let's stay here with Shirov Artemiev. Rook g7. Now once again the rook is getting active. This poor knight still can't find the right place. c3 played, chasing the knight away. Well, does White win? Does White win a pawn like that? Knight takes b3. The question now is what happens after rook... no, rook g3, knight d2. It's not what you want to do. And you actually are in danger if you take like that, because... yeah, rook takes g5, and maybe... well, rook e3, I'm not sure. He had to play b4, I guess. He had to play b4, because he would still take the pawn. He would still take the pawn, but he would avoid Black having the passed pawn there. So what has happened? a5, e5, a4 gives Black a passed pawn. I mean, it's not... obviously it has to be a draw objectively, but it's still a fight. Takes... let's see what happens in the game of Mamedyarov and Yufa. That's interesting. That's really interesting. I mean, Mamedyarov is a piece down. And is it some sort of a fortress all of a sudden? Hard to believe that. Find it hard to believe that. Bishop to e8. What's bishop e8? Is e2 a draw? King d2. That's a bit funny. Yeah, I mean, it is a draw, obviously, right? King d2, bishop b5, e2. So Mamedov saves his own, but they are still in minus, so it's -1. Gelfand and Oparin, it's same position where this long diagonal simply proves to be too long. There is no way white can control all the squares on this diagonal, so bishop goes to a1. You can, yeah, cannot really force the bishop away from here, and therefore it's just a draw. So the only game which is in progress now, Gelfand is still playing against Oparin, but it will be a draw. The only game which is still a bit unclear is this game between Shirov and Artemiev, because Artemiev's pawn is quite far away. And I'm wondering if Shirov will manage to avoid playing rook and bishop against the rook. Rook a1. Okay. Because we've seen this passed pawn might be very dangerous. Rook goes to g3. So now you probably don't want to lose your pawn, right? So you go king e2. Yeah, that's what Alexei Shirov does. Let's see. a2 or not a2. There is a check on g2, a2 played by Artemiev. I guess what you do is rook a1 here. Okay, yeah, and it does look like a draw. I mean, black won't even manage to get rook and bishop against the rook. King goes to e3. Yeah, the plan is to go bishop c4. After king d6, it's, I guess, bishop c4 and then just to take the a2 pawn. Does that work? Or it's still tricky, right? It's still tricky in case of... Oh, well, bishop e2. Bishop e2 is fine. So he's gonna win the a2 pawn. Bishop d5. c4. Then, okay, the easiest way for Artemiev is, of course, just to take on e4. Just to take on e2. Yeah, he takes on e2, he offers a draw. So a crazy game where I believe Shirov was much better at some point, finishes in a draw. Mamedov made a draw in a very, very dangerous situation. Wróblewski has lost again, so it's -3. And Gelfand, yeah, after trying all those moves for a very, very long time, I mean, I believe he's really, really disappointed, because the position with extra exchange, of course, was winning for him, but yeah, he could not manage, and finally they've entered the well-known theoretical drawish position. So 3 draws and another loss for Wróblewski, which makes it practically impossible for the Kings to tie the match. Going into the last round, they are trailing by 3 full points. In the game between queens and princes, well, the round is over actually. 4 draws. That means the queens prove they are the queens. They've already won the match, going to the last round with a +5 lead. So the last round will start 6:45 local time, which means we have a break of roughly 25 minutes. Stay tuned, make sure you are coming back to watch the last round. welcome back everyone, welcome back to the final round of a Nutcracker tournament. Who would have thought after the classical part of the event that the youngsters will win the rapid portion with such a score that in the final round they only need 1 point to secure the match win. So the princes are leading in the battle versus kings with +3 going to the last round. So you can see the cross table 31.5 versus 28.5. In the other section, it has to be said, queens already proved that their position. So 5 points is the difference with only 1 round to be played. So no intrigue there. The match is already over. So we will be, as usual, concentrating on the main tournament, on princes versus kings. Andrei Yesipenko plays with Alexei Shirov. Vladislav Artemiev faces Boris Gelfand. Vladislav Artemiev has a fantastic score, once again, to remind you. Shahryar Mamedyarov has the white pieces against Grigory Oparin, and Sergei Rublevsky has the white pieces against Daniil Yufa. Okay, so where do we start? Yeah, we have Mamedyarov and Oparin, but only 3 moves played here. I think I can show the game between Rublevsky and Yufa, where an Alekhine defense was played, which is a bit of a surprise, I would say, but it might have been the first time somebody played e4 against Daniil Yufa, interestingly enough. Alright, so yeah, I think I had this position for a few times being black. In one of the games, the game against Emil Sutovsky, I think Emil went f4 where I played knight e4, and interestingly enough, this position is sort of acceptable for black. Right, Rublevsky does it other way. He goes with g3, castle short, and now, yeah, now he finally takes the bishop on g6. Yeah, because you don't want to take before black castles, right? If you take on g6 before black castles, there might be some issues on the h-file. So it's better to wait a bit. g6, castles, knight takes, h takes, a bishop to g5. So the other bishop will go to f3, I guess. Well, it's a pleasant position with no risk for white. Got to be a pleasant position with no risk, but we've all seen, I mean, what kind of positions Rublevsky was losing with, I mean, Rublevsky was losing in rapid. So today it's 0 out of 3 for him, which is just incredible. So I just really hope Sergei will find his play in this very last game. Well, Andrei Yesipenko against Alexei Shirov, it's yet another untimed run with Yesipenko having the white pieces. A3, A5 was played. I think Boris Gelfand has played A6 here against Andrei Yesipenko, managed to make a draw yesterday. So this time it's A5, E4, E5, Rook D1, Queen to C7, takes, and knight goes to D4. Still has to be a theory, I believe, so Shirov is thinking. I'm wondering what's the move here, because knight f5 is what white wants to play, so it's got to be some knight g4, I believe. It's got to be some knight g4, even though it's h3 in this case. Got to prepare for knight f5 somehow, and rook e8 doesn't really work, because in this case knight goes to f5, and you don't have bishop f8 because knight b5. So you will probably end up playing bishop c5 in this case, which might be not that bad actually. That's very interesting as well. So Gelfand against Artemiev, it's a bit of a weird Sicilian with bishop b5. e6, castle, knight e7, no surprises so far, but then rook e1, knight g6, bishop f1, d5, e takes, queen takes, knight c3, queen goes back to d8, and g3. So this light square bishop, I mean, was developed in a way, was developed in 2 different ways. So first it went to b5, then went back to f1, now it will be fan-chatted on g3, on g2 after g3. Well, so What can I say? I mean, it will be some sort of a King's Indian setup for White, right? So the bishop will go to g2. White is unlikely to get d2, d4, so he will play d3 a bit. And yeah, I mean, it's a comfortable position, but no, it's not White's advantage we are talking about here. No, there shouldn't be any advantage for White. Well, Black has an interesting option to try. I mean, because, I mean, if you finish a development like this and castle d3, you'll have difficulties playing b6. I mean, you will always have to watch out for the various tricks. So maybe now, after g3, it's an opportunity for Black to play b6 and to put the bishop on b7. Then continuing with queen d7, you know, to guard the bishop on b7 and so on. However, in this case you have to watch out for d4, which might be possible. Knight takes, bishop takes g2, and White, for instance, takes on e6 here. Who knows what's that? I mean, looks being roughly equal to me. Takes, and I mean, you probably don't want the double check. You just take the queen. Black takes on e6, king g2. White might be slightly better, yeah, thanks to this knight's position on e4. I mean, at least Black has to be careful. Bishop e7 played by Gelfand. Bishop to h4 immediately. h4, he wants to play h5, and especially in case of a castle, h5 is unpleasant because you end up being on h8 with this knight. Not the most pleasant position, and it might be that White actually gets something to play on. Let's check the other games. Mamedyarov against Oparin develops in very original fashion. So it started as the Reti opening, knight f3, g3, but after knight d7, Mamedyarov decided to switch to some sort of a Catalan with d4, e6, bishop g2, knight f6, castles, and then Black has played b5, stopping White's c4 idea. Queen d3, rook b8, knight went to e5, knight takes, pawn takes, knight d7, and Mamedyarov has played e4. So he wants a sharp battle, he wants to open the position up, but I'm not sure if objectively this idea is all that great. Not sure really. I guess he's planning for queen d4 to target the knight. In case of knight c6, it's queen c3. I mean, somewhat original, but this way he makes sure that he will have time to take on d5. As in case of bishop b7, he'll take on d5, and now it's terribly unpleasant for Black because this check, Black has no good way to deal with this check. Well, so checking the game of Boris Gelfand, after h4 bishop f6 was played, Artemiev quickly goes knight e4. So I'm not sure of bishop f6, to be honest. Looks like Black can go back here. Maybe that's the whole point. So that the knight on e4 gives Black an access to e5 square, so now h5 will be answered with knight e5. Takes, and White doesn't have knight takes c5 because after bishop c5, rook e5, there is bishop f2 with queen f6 to follow in case of a capture. Maybe bishop e7 back, because otherwise I don't really like White's position, Black's position. I mean, some sort of b6 is quite dangerous, I believe. Well, maybe it is playable. b6, intending to take on f6 with the queen. Or maybe the pawn takes. Well, actually, maybe the pawn takes, interestingly enough. So Black gets some open file already. Then he will put the bishop on b7. Queen d7 will castle long. Some play like that. The pawn on e5 was taken in the game of Mamedyarov and Oparin. So now let's see if if Mamedyarov will prove the compensation easy enough. Interesting development in Shirov Yasipenko. I believe this is the game we have on a camera view. After knight d4, knight g6 was played. g3, b4, knight a5, bishop goes to e5, knight a4, c5, attacking the e4 pawn, and then f2, f3 happen. Rook to c8, keeping the knight stuck on the edge of the board on a4. I guess bishop e3 might be the move. Once again attacking the c5 pawn. Or you can make an argument for bishop c4, stopping the c pawn, and well, actually it does look comfortable for white. So black really needs to organize some play on the king side, where he has all his pieces directed towards the king side. I mean, you just have to exchange the knight from f5, and then, you know, bishop gets access to d4. There will be some sacrifices on g3. So I'm guessing even a move like knight e7 might be a move to consider, so that if takes, queen takes, then bishop d4 becomes an issue. In case of bishop e3, well, still looks like white is better. Still looks like white is better. We shall see. We shall see. Right. Well, Mamedyarov and Parin develop. I mean, a few more moves played. Well, actually, only one move. So knight e5, as I said, looked dangerous, but after queen d4, it turns out the plan was not to go knight c6, but simply bishop d6. E takes d5, and Grigory Parin decided to castle. So now he will try to prove. I believe he will try to prove the compensation in this line. Mamedyarov has to be principal, I think. I don't really see. Well, maybe knight c3 will be some advantage for him, actually. Maybe he's not forced to take on a7. I just thought, like, if you want something, you probably take on a7 here, where black most likely to play this. After capture, he takes on g2, and in this case, for instance, white is 2 pawns up, but I believe it's a very strong compensation for black. c5, and then if black gets the queen on the long diagonal, I think white's position is really bad. Knight c3, right, developing the pieces instead. But this has to be fine for black. I mean, even like taking on d5, playing some c6 to drive the knight away should be fine. And the game between Wróblewski and Jufa after bishop g5, e5 was played by Daniil Jufa. d5, queen goes to c7, a3, a5, bishop goes to f3, rook e8, bishop g2. There is some pressure on c6, right? Black doesn't really want to take, but he can consider going e4 in some positions. Still, I'm not convinced that white's position is better. Okay, Shirov made his next move after rook a8, bishop c4 was played. Shirov made his next move, which was bishop d4 check. Very interesting. So what happens now if knight takes, pawn takes? There is some unpleasant pin on c-file, and black gets the square for the knight on e5. Right, so knight e5 becomes a very serious issue after b3, for instance. It's knight e5 attacking the e2 pawn, attacking the c4 bishop. So that's really nice for black. Therefore king g2 is played. But then I assume some move like rook e8 might be a problem for white, because yeah, the idea is clear, to sacrifice on e4. No bishop f4 just yet, which would have been a case in case of knight e5, I guess. Knight e5, bishop f4, and then black has difficulties moving his queen. Right, rook f8 seems to be better because now black is clearly threatening to take on e4. Not such a pleasant position, I would say, for Andrei Yesipenko. Because if you end up playing a move like rook d1 to e1, it's clear black will have something. Gelfand went to sacrifice the pawn against Vladislav Artemiev. Ah, well, not really, it seems. Well, let's see. After knight e4, he has played knight g2 e5, knight e5, bishop e5 was played, knight takes e5, bishop g3, now knight e6, his answer was bishop f2, of course, so you have to take, queen d4 check, king h2, queen takes here, and c3 was played. I think it will be quite a pleasant position for white after, say, castles, d4, and then putting the bishop to f4 and g2. You know, white has two bishops, potentially can open a center with d4, d5. It looks more pleasant for white. Okay, some tactical sequence has started in the game of Shahryar Mamedyarov. After knight c3, e d5 was played, knight d5, c6. Mamedyarov has played bishop f4, and I'm wondering if he has blundered knight c4. Well, at least it's clear white can't take on d6 because of queen d6, right? And then the knight on d5 is pinned. So after knight c4, you better look for another move. And a move like, yeah, knight b4 doesn't work because of c5. I thought knight b4 to be the move, but it doesn't work because of c5, it seems. At least I don't see what white can do here. Nothing really. Okay, so you end up moving the knight back, where black can actually take on f4 and play a move like bishop e6 maybe, and to meet capture on c6 with knight b2. Mamedyarov has played b2, b3. Okay. Messing things up even further. So now if bishop f4, he's planning to take with the queen to attack the rook, and say if bishop e6 happens, white takes on c4, white takes on d5, white is actually winning a pawn because bishop d5 is not possible. Rook a d1 wins the piece in this case. Okay, what to do for black? Not that many options. The knight is not moving, right? Knight b6 should be bad because of knight f6. So black ended up taking on d5, the most natural response. B takes c4, b takes c4, which should be roughly equal, to be honest. White will win the pawn back, no problem. White will win the pawn back, no problem, but I don't really think white can be better here. Well, in the game between Artemiev and Gelfand, after a castle, white has played d4, and Gelfand replied with queen b6, after which Artemiev pretty quickly went for queen b3. So he's obviously fine trading the queens like this. He's obviously fine trading the queen like this, because, yeah, it will be two bishops for Vladislav Artemiev and a huge mass of pawns on the queen side. So particularly b4 and then b5 being a very unpleasant idea. So black is not advised to trade on b3 himself. Yeah, if d4, d5 break happens somewhere, I think it's clear it favors black. It's clear it favors white. Well, queen d8, kind of preventing this one, but you will have to solve the same problems after bishop g2, because d5, d4 is pretty much an idea here. Bishop f4 played by Artemiev first. No, it's a very, very pleasant position for white, so once again Artemiev managed to get an advantage. Let's see. Yeah, to remind you, the kings have to win with +3 score in order to level the overall score in the match. And look what Cherov is doing. He has taken on e4. He has taken on e4. He's going for it. He's sacrificing a piece and he's going for it. So in case of fe4, his plan is to go queen e5, I guess, attacking the e4 pawn as well as the knight on f5. And bishop d5 should be bad because of that. Queen takes, the king has to go to h3, and now I assume Alexei Shirov has found something. Not sure just yet. fe4 played, queen goes to e5. That's the key moment here, because, as I said, both the pawn and the knight are hanging. Bishop f5 was played. Bishop d5 was played. Bishop takes, pawn takes. Queen takes d5. King goes to h3, I assume. b3 might be, you know, a move with a tempo in this case. King h3 is played, right? I'm yet to see how black is planning to get to this king. Queen f3. Now b3 is a threat. b3 is a threat here. Okay. But I don't see any other threats. If white keeps his stuff together with something like queen d3, he might be just okay. Yeah, in this case it's queen h5, king g2, and I don't know what. Because black's attack, I mean, it looks cool and everything, but it's kind of a couple of moves only needed for one. Yeah, and knight e5. And then queen f1 is a must. And it's still not clear if black gets there. It's not clear if black gets there. Yeah, that's a crazy position. So once again, queen d3, I don't really see what else black can do. So has to go queen h5. c4 I thought for a bit, but then even queen takes d4 should be fine. Well, let's not forget black has a couple of pawns for the piece. So maybe he will have some compensation regardless if he gets to the king or not. I mean, yeah, white is still not mobilized. But Yespenko has 9 minutes and seemingly, I mean, he definitely has the time to find the right way in this position if this right way exists. Queen d3, what else can be done? Can he play some quirky move like queen c6, for instance, attacking this one? So that, I mean, in this case it seems white will have to take on d4. Say cd4 happens, b3. The king is, strangely enough, is quite safe on h3. The king is quite safe. Ah no, there is knight e5 is unpleasant. Still, I have difficulties to believe queen c6 will work. What's the threat here, by the way? What's the threat here? Can white all of a sudden play a move like knight b6? I know, rook c6, and then, you know, some things might happen on the 6th rank as well. Knight takes, pawn takes, target. Yeah, the rook is protected, the knight is hanging. Well, it's a crazy position. Once again, the kind of position you have to be Alexei Shirov to understand what is going on. Artemiev went to sacrifice the pawn against Boris Gelfand. Quite interesting. So white simply concentrates all the forces in the center, and after bishop b7 he went for d5. Knight a5, queen b4, e takes d5 plate. And now the question is, what is the follow-up for white? I guess c4 might be just good. c4, then after d4 white should be able somehow to win the d4 pawn back. Even with a move like, I know, queen d6 is not that clear. Maybe this is not entirely clear. So it's either you go c4 or you try to invade with the rooks, right? Or maybe bishop b5, interestingly enough. But not sure. Not sure. I mean, white always has the compensation, right? White can play bishop g2 and he's probably still much better, but there is no clear-cut solution that I can see. Artemiev goes queen e7, which is once again a practical choice with the major piece being on 7th rank. He cannot be worse. So I mean, if he trades the queens, he can't be worse there, and you know, maybe he'll find a way to advantage. Well, very fast develops the game between Mamedyarov and Oparin. Already a lot of stuff has happened. I don't really understand what is that. I think Mamedyarov might have lost his nerve because it doesn't look like he has a good position. He's playing very fast, what you would expect him doing if he would have, like, you know, a really good position here, but he doesn't seem to have it. I'm asking myself what will happen after a4, and so far I don't have an answer to this one. I don't really see. Bishop d1 apparently, because you can't really take, right? So you'll have to play bishop d1 and then black plays whatever, and he's well, rook d4 actually, he's quite annoying. Bishop here. Oh yeah, and the trick is that if you give a check, Mamedyarov has prepared rook f1. Okay. So there are some tricks, but still, objectively speaking, I don't really believe there is any kind of advantage for white, and might be even worse. So a4, bishop to c2. Well, I just missed this one altogether. Bishop c2 covers the b1 square, but it still looks that it's only black who can be better. g6, and you know, with king being that weak, it's only black who can be better here. So I'm really puzzled what goes on in the game between Mamedyarov and Oparin. Wróblewski seemingly is not getting anywhere in his game against Ufa, so he allowed his bishop from g5 to be exchanged. This is how it happened. He went to g5, knight h7, went to c1, so repeated the position a couple of times, finally went for h4, takes, bishop d4, knight goes to e4. So he's hoping to use the h-file for some sort of an attack with queen g4, queen h4. Okay, knight c5 was played. I guess a queen g4, queen h4 is what Wróblewski is planning. Then to move the bishop to lift the king to g2, and then to try to use the h-file for some attack. Let's see how it works for him. I guess you start with queen g4 immediately. Well, full compensation. Now I realize it's a full compensation for Artemiev against Gelfand and Shirov against Yasipenko. I'm still not sure. After queen f3, queen d3 was played, a check on h5, and rook f e8. So it's just a piece sacrifice for the development advantage for a serious attack, I have to say, but still, there is no immediate disaster for white, right? I mean, white can take and then play. I mean, rook d2 is an awkward move, of course. Yeah, and then some queen g4 happens. Or knight e5. No, it is bad. It's got to be bad for white. Knight e5 is just killing, perhaps. Then knight g4. Yeah, nice game by Alexei Shirov so far. Still not sure if white can't play a move like bishop e3. Well, there's always a tempo with knight e5 that the young guy has to worry about. I don't really think white can afford to allow rook e2, but who knows? Who knows? Bishop to e3, played by Andrei Yasipenko, so now I think black has a bunch of stuff. Black has knight e5 first of all, which might be just winning, because you still have to protect the knight on f5. Knight e5 is on the board. And Mamedyarov, interestingly, still cannot find the move. Well, knight e5, Yasipenko is down to 2 minutes only. Let's see if he will find the defense. Let's see if he will find the defense. Yeah, I think Boris Gelfand managed to find a nice defensive resource. So at least making sure that one bishop gets exchanged. His position is still tough though, it seems, because white can play rook e1 and try to get the second rook on 7th rank, where the extra pawn black has might prove to be not enough for white's huge activity. Let's go back to Yasipenko and Shirov, because after knight e5, white came up with queen f1, where I thought something was just winning outright for black, but I'm no longer sure. Knight g4, bishop takes. A check from h2 is not really clear, right? King f3. Let's see. I mean, it's almost a mate, but knight g4 is on the board. Not that I can see too many moves for white, right? So you got to take on d4. And maybe cd4 is good enough, because rook c2 is coming, and as well black is threatening a trivial thing to take on f5 and then knight e3, winning the material back. h2 pawn is hanging as well. Yeah, so this is just good. This is just good, and Alexei Shirov is going to win this one. Unless there is some, out of this world move for Andrei Yasipenko. I don't really believe it exists here. Bishop takes, and yeah, c takes d4 is simple and strong, so the other rook joins the action, threatening rook c2 check. This has to be enough. After rook c1, I mean, if black doesn't find anything here, which is hard to believe, I mean, it's got to be mate. But even if he doesn't find anything here, he can always switch to plan B, taking on f5. And in this position, I don't really believe a white will manage to save. It's 2 pawns up, right? cd4 played. cd4 played, and white went with h2, h3. Don't really believe that. Rook c2. What's the move? King h1? No, king g1, I mean. King g1, no, it's like knight f2. Got to be completely winning this one. Knight f2, and I don't really see a move. Knight on f5 is hanging, knight h3 is a threat. g4, it's knight h3 check, followed by knight f2 double check, which is important, and then finally a mate from h1. So rook c2 check wins the game pretty much for Alexei Shirov. Check here, knight f2. I don't believe the move exists for white here. Knight h4. Can knight h4 be that move white is looking for? I mean, got to be lost even after g5, but you might want to find something more convincing. I know you can take the rook, by the way. You just can take the rook and go from there, you know, playing g6, then bringing the other rook to second rank. It's got to be winning. Well, Artemy Van Gelfand simplified the position. It's a rook endgame with just, well, white might be just a tiny bit better, not really, it's just a draw, I believe. Oparin against Mamedyarov. Mamedyarov got himself into trouble again, because I think he's about to, I mean, he lost one pawn and he's about to lose the second one. So now he will need all his trickiness in order to save the game. Yeah, it's a draw for Artemiev and Gelfand, so one more draw for the team of Princes, and they will win the match. Nobody expected them to win from the start of the tournament. Nobody expected them to win from the classical portion. But, well, it was just a disastrous play in Rapid by the Kings, as well as, I have to say, have to give credit to the younger guys. They performed really, really well. So, after h3, Shirov is still thinking, because obviously there should be some alternatives to the most straightforward rook c2. So I think he might be looking at queen f5, which also seems to be a pretty valid move here. Okay, we are back to Mamedyarov and Oparin, where here it looked to me that Mamedyarov will lose the a3 pawn. So far he manages to keep it on the board. So he gives a check on b8, goes rook d8, after g5 goes to d4. But still he can never take on a2. Maybe bishop b5 is the move. Maybe bishop b5 is the move to play. Maybe he will escape, but once again, a draw in this game means it's a loss in the match for... Well, and coming back to the game of Sergei Rublevsky and Daniil Yufa, once again, I think Rublevsky has just blundered again, because he has played rook c6 in this position, which looked totally safe for him, and after rook c6, I don't really understand what happens after rook takes c6. Rook c6, dc6, bishop f2, and he's losing his d1 rook. He's losing his d1 rook. Bishop f2 to start with is just, no, I mean, that's kind of a case of a mutual blindness, I believe. Strange case of a mutual blindness. Bishop c5, which allows white to swap on c8, or lift the rook to d3, which might be as well, which might be good as well. Simply moving the rook away from d file is good enough. Yeah, it's really incredible. It really is incredible. Rook to d3. Okay, so the rook is protected now. The rook is protected, can go to f3. King g2 is the key move here. If white manages to play king g2, he is in control, and I think it's a fair chance Rublevsky will win this game. It's simply a bit too late to start scoring. The tournament will be over after this round, and I think we already can congratulate the team of Princes with outstanding performance in Rapid, because I don't really see how Oparin can lose to Mamedyarov, the endgame being a pawn up. So in case of a draw in this one, the draw is already enough to secure the overall victory. Queen a7 played by Daniil Yufa. King g2 is a set. That's the key move here. That's the key move here. Queen a5, desperately trying to activate the queen to get it to e1. So let's see. Now rook d1 back is the good move to play. Right, so covers all the squares, wants to play rook to h1. Now I'm sure Rublevsky has it under control, but yeah, once again, it was a terrible blunder to go rook c6 from him. And, you know, Oparin might still win this one. Mamedyarov is still in trouble against Oparin, so that's the current position here, where white's h2 pawn is about to be lost. And h4 strangely enough, might be not enough to hold the draw. A check here, you go to h2, and black can even take, and I'm not sure if this one is a draw, because the pawn is running very fast, rook c2 being the next move. So really tough task for Mamedyarov. Let's concentrate on Wróblewski's game. Queen... Okay, meanwhile, Alexei Shirov has won, so he definitely has the best performance from the Kings team. He definitely has the best performance from the team of Kings. And he looked a bit surprised, to be honest. Okay, so what happens here? Yeah, Mamedyarov will be 2 pawns down with not that many chances to save. Let's see what happens in the game of Sergei Wróblewski. So he has taken on c8, went rook h1. I believe he is winning because yeah, the threat of queen h8 is simply too much for Daniil Yufa. So finally, Sergei Wróblewski will win his first game in this tournament. It's just that it's already a bit too late, as I said. Right. So it will be an overall victory for the Kings. Well, I think one of the few in the rapid, or maybe the first one at all in the rapid time format. So finally a bit relieved Sergei Wróblewski, so kind of a proof he can still play chess, which of course, I mean, I know the situation, believe me. I mean, it really feels painful when you understand you're doing something wrong, but you can't help it. Okay, let's see if Mamedyarov will save. At least it will be... I mean, if they will win 3-1 at least the final round, that will be a bit of a consolation, even though the match is already lost, as I don't believe Mamedyarov can win this one. So bishop goes to b7. Oh, he managed to arrange some sort of a defense, right? In case of rook h3. Bishop g2 will be the move, and black can't take on h4. Okay, checking the games of the ladies sections. Have been 2 draws. Kovalevskaya Solozhenkina made the draw. It was a draw for Zayats and Goltseva. Dimitrova has won against Srutinskaya. And Maltsevskaya apparently is winning against Grabuzova, so the princess will win 3-1, but it's not so important anymore because the match is already won. Okay, so that's the game between Mamedyarov and Oparin we are looking at. Rook to h3. What's the trick here? I thought bishop g2 was the answer. Mamedyarov, however, seems to be somewhat surprised with this move. Bishop g2, is there any trick here? King g5. No, I mean I was looking for the way to lose with black, but apparently there is no way to lose. White decided that he doesn't need bishop g2 because he will only play bishop g2 in case of rook h4. Rook h4 played, bishop g2. This lets black to play g3 to move the rook and then to have this h-pawn still in the business. g3, king g3. And yeah, and a draw agreed. It's 3-1 victory for the Kings. And overall, it's a victory for the princess with +1 score. And once again, as I said, it's just an unbelievable result in the rapid. So they lost the classical portion, and well, they could have lost more, in fact. I mean, they could lose with even worse score. Once again, Sergei Wróblewski wasn't convincing in the classical format as well, but then in rapid something has happened. In the leader of the team of Kings, Shahryar Mamedyarov, has lost. I mean, that was the key, perhaps, that Shahryar Mamedyarov lost both of his games to Vladislav Artemiev. So here we have the last game in progress, the game which practically has no impact on the tournament standing, as the queens, the older ladies, have already won the match. Here, however, Maltsevskaya should be able to win this one. So she takes on g6, king g6. The easiest way, perhaps, is just to, just to go to a rook ending. Somewhat strange check from g8. I would actually play rook f4 and then intend to play bishop e4. Okay, let's see what does that check mean. King f6. No, it's a really strange strange square to put the rook on. You can go to g4 and just go back. Nothing can happen. I mean, it's perfectly fine whatever you do here. Rook h8, a bit of a surprise. King back to g7, rook to e8. Okay, so maybe finally Maltsevskaya wants to go bishop e4 and trade the bishops. Let's see, rook to c2, king g2. Yeah, not much black can do. It's not much black can do here. Bishop g6, a check from e7, a check from e6, and next move will be rook takes g6. So white is completely winning, of course, and I don't see this game going on. Right, so a victory for the princes, 3-1. Princesses, yeah, 3-1, but as I said, it's an overall victory for the queens. I think it will be +3 score. Yeah, king f7 and rook g6 follows. A nice victory for Alexandra Maltsevskaya, but as I said, the younger ladies have lost the match. Basically, they also won the rapid portion because they were trailing 6 points after the classical, and they've lost only -3. So very logical. The shorter the time control becomes, the quicker the younger players are, the better they are, and more dangerous they are. Alright, so I think this allows us to conclude the tournament. I hope you enjoyed the broadcast. I hope you enjoyed the games. I mean, there have been quite a lot of spectacular games, particularly in the men's tournament. Shahryar Mamedyarov in the classical portion, I mean, he was just a beast. I mean, that was really incredible. Some rapid games were of a decent quality. Okay, so to remind you, it is a traditional tournament. Well, you are always welcome to join. You're always welcome to join the broadcast. Well, please make sure next year, at the end of the year, please join the broadcast. It will be held for the 5th time. It was fun working for you. Thanks for joining. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, everything, and bye-bye.